So what would you say are like maybe the top three most common causes of low testosterone that you see?
Uh, so low testosterone usually comes from a poor metabolism, right? A metabolic disorder. So it actually in large part comes from dehydration, right? Um, Insulin resistance, lipotoxicity. These are the primary drivers. And there is plenty of scientific data that shows just simply hydrating your body to a higher degree will raise your testosterone, right? Just being more hydrated. Now, when I talk about hydration, I'm not talking about drinking more water because drinking more water is actually not how you hydrate your
Yeah.
body, right? You can drink a ton of water, and really all what happens is it just goes in your mouth and comes right out the other end, right? If you want to stay hydrated, you need to increase the amount of electrolytes stored in your body. So that's going to be your calcium, your potassium, your magnesium, right? So now, one thing that's extremely common in our population is low magnesium. If you're in a magnesium deficit, magnesium is one of those things that's needed in order to maintain an adequate pH balance, right? This is what helps to alkalize your body, right? When we talk about an alkaline diet, essentially we're talking about a diet that increases the electrolyte balance in your body to help alkalize your body. That's what an alkaline diet is, right? So if you're eating a lot of animal products, if you're eating a lot of saturated fat, magnesium serves as currency to pay the tab for eating that way, right? So number one, increased saturated fat actually inhibits magnesium absorption in the intestines. This is important to know because this contributes to a magnesium deficiency. And magnesium deficiency doesn't really show up in a blood test because you don't really have much. You're not supposed to have much magnesium in your blood. If you have a lot of magnesium in your blood, that's a big problem, right? Because that means it's being leached from your muscle tissue and your bones, right? It's supposed to be stored in your muscle tissue and your bones. Same thing with calcium. Calcium is not supposed to be high in your blood either. That's a really bad sign, right? And that is one of the primary factors in driving atherosclerotic plaque buildup, right, leading to heart
Yeah.
disease. So if you are, let's say, eating processed sugary foods, your body has to use magnesium because magnesium is one of the things that helps absorb glucose into your cells and convert that glucose or that sugar into ATP inside your cells to use for energy, right? ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a form of energy that your cells use in order to engage in a respiratory metabolic process, right? So if you have a deficiency in magnesium, well, your body then has to use something else to pick up the tab. A lot of times this is calcium. So what happens is calcium is then leached from your muscle tissue and your bone into your bloodstream in order to correct this imbalance and pay this tab, right? Um, Now, if you increase the amount of potassium and magnesium in your diet, well, then you don't have to expend calcium to alkalize your body, right? The potassium is really important for maintaining an adequate amount of blood plasma. And the reason why that's important is because blood plasma is it's like lanes in a highway. Less blood plasma is a result of dehydration, which leads to like a thickening or thinning of the blood, right? Where instead of having four lanes on the highway, you got like two. So now the nutrients that is in your blood takes longer to get to your cells. You get like this cellular metabolic congestion, right? There's an
Hmm.
efficiency in delivery of nutrients, an inefficiency, I should say. But your blood is also responsible for removing metabolites from your cells. And so if your blood is doing a poor job at delivering nutrients to your cells, it is also doing a poor job of extracting metabolites and waste products from your cells, which then leads to higher levels of oxidative stress, cellular damage, which then leads to chronic inflammation, right? So if you wanted to reduce inflammation in your body, if you wanted to reduce the oxidative stress, then you increase the amount of magnesium and potassium rich foods in your diet, and essentially you get more lanes, you get more blood, you get more blood oxygenation, you get faster waste removal from your body, you get an even load balance that protects your kidneys from having to do a whole bunch of excess work as far as decontaminating your blood and your cells. If you reduce the amount of oxidative stress and you reduce the amount of inflammation, then what happens, this serves as a green light where your body says, hey, since I don't have to deal with regulating all this inflammation and oxidative stress, we can then use that surplus of energy into building more muscle mass and increasing testosterone production. Stress destroys testosterone levels. Right? So the more stressed you get, the more oxidative stress and the more chronic inflammation you incur. This kills your testosterone and it increases estrogen output. And then increased estrogen output leads to excessive body fat gain because estrogen encourages your body to store fat, and then fat also produces estrogen. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, like
Right.
an Ouroboros of sorts, right? If this process goes on for, let's say, 2, 3, 5 years, this is where you get moobs, excess back fat, right? A lot of fat storage in the torso, then excess visceral fat, right? Because men, right, you don't really have ovaries or progesterone and things like that, right, to really offset your body fat deposits. So you get the worst of all worlds because then you end up being a guy with excess fat storage in your legs and hips and arms and chest, and then you still have the testosterone from your gonads that encourages visceral fat buildup around the waistline and on top of the organs. And then having excessive levels of inflammation and oxidative stress increases the rate of fat storage around the organs, the midline,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then that further leads to insulin resistance because now your organs are getting calcified, and you have this layer of fat over the top that inhibits nutrient absorption, right? So your organs don't function as well as they did before because of all this visceral fat buildup, and then that becomes inflammatory, and then that plummets your testosterone even more, and all of this type of stuff. And then by the time you're 40, 45 years old or so, you're now in andropause, which is the male version of menopause, right? You have to eat your way out of that. You don't get out of it any other way. You can't train your way out. And the reason for that is because training actually costs testosterone. Muscle protein synthesis costs testosterone. Testosterone is like a form of currency. And the more you train and the harder you work, the more you spend. You spend more magnesium, you spend more calcium, you spend more testosterone, you spend more serotonin, you spend more dopamine. So your body's burning through all of these nutrients just to sustain what you currently are. Not improvement, just sustenance, just to keep you alive. So this is metabolic and physiological and biological poverty. You cut your calories, you just make it worse. You just put yourself deeper into poverty. It's like a pay cut. So the only way to get out is to eat your way out. And if you're in the gym training every day, you're a guy who's trying to lose weight. One of the worst things you could do is an hour of cardio a day and spend an hour at the gym lifting weights. You're doing too much training volume, and so you're expending too many resources. A stressed body that is chronically inflamed is not going to prioritize building more muscle mass. Building muscle mass is not a priority for the human body. Survival is. Fat storage is a survival mechanism. So your body will actually prioritize breaking down muscle and storing fat. It's just easier to do because muscle is very expensive. It's very metabolically expensive. It requires a lot of resources to maintain. Fat does not. So your body is like, hey, I can hold on to this fat much easier than I can hold on to muscle. So the most expensive one, well, that's got to go. And this is actually why most men fail to build muscle. Because if you don't view it through this lens, you're not going to understand why you're not seeing any gains.